Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Enderal. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you're chose to join me today here in the presence of the Grand Master of the Order. What order? Don't ask. He knows what's going on, and we have been sent here because he has requested our presence.
So, you are the prodigy everyone is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I am Teola Aranthia, son of Lorius I and Grand Master of the Order, and I'm honored to meet you. What is your name?
Honored to meet me. My name is Shera. You wanted to see me?
Yes, and I will come straight to the point. You are here because I believe that you are special. Humanity faces a threat that needs to be stopped, and to achieve this, you are indispensable.
You're talking about the Red Menace, aren't you?
Among other things, yes.
Huh.
I do not need to explain to you that the present situation on Vin is chaotic. The wars, the living dead, common people who are losing their minds, to name only the most obvious. What most people are not aware of is the connection between these events. You, however, have encountered it, as have I.
Oh. The visions. So you know where they come from?
I do. And I will explain everything to you. What it means, who we are, and what your part in all of this is. Come, follow me. Maybe you already know who I am. My entire life, I served the gods who ruled Vin, until their death 2 years ago. What you probably do not know is that the one responsible for their death is my son, Narazul Aranthial.
Oh.
He hated the Lightborn because he believed that they robbed mankind of their right to freedom, so he strived to overthrow them. He found followers, formed an army and declared war on them, and thus on me, a servant of the Lightborn as well. It all ended in a battle 30 years ago, which Narazul won. He killed every single survivor except for me, and locked me in a dungeon on Nerim. I still do not know why he spared me.
You don't? If Narazul was your son, why did he hate the gods so much? Shouldn't he have been, I don't know, devoted to them?
There were circumstances favoring the development, but it's a long story which we won't discuss now.
Yeah, I think that might have been in relation to the previous game, the one that is a total conversion of Oblivion. So the Lightborn are really dead. If you, the Order of the Gods, apparently that's what the Order is, acknowledge that fact, why do people not know about it? Well, maybe they don't acknowledge that fact. Maybe they know that themselves, but they just don't tell it to people.
Good question. Because at the moment, stability is the highest good.
It is.
Even more so considering what we are facing. The rulers of Kira and Kile both made the mistake to acknowledge the death of the gods to their people, and the civil wars that followed in their countries are evidence of the chaos that such a revelation entails. Enderal is the cradle of the Order of the Gods, the epitome of theocracy. It is unthinkable what would happen if we confirmed these rumors. I am sure you understand this. Maybe when all this is over that will change, but for now it is imperative that we deny all rumors of that kind.
Well, actually, he makes a good point. He just kind of reminded me why they all suck and why we have known that they suck since pretty early in the game. He does make a good point. What I said I didn't mean as in the stability is the highest good. I'm sure it's very important to keep stability. Of course, that might also keep other things, like, for example, these guys in power, but that's not really the point. The wars that ensued in Kire and Nire, those are well known. And we learned in the beginning of the game that they were a consequence of the gods dying, or at least the rebellion against the gods. I think, I'm not 100% sure on the facts there. But what I meant by it is that it actually was what I had presumed, that they didn't tell anybody. They know it, but they don't tell anybody. So you managed to free yourself.
Yes, after more than 30 years, when the death of the gods made the magic around the prison disappear. And during my escape in the northern mountains of Nerim, I also had them for the first time. The dreams.
Who are you?
Shut up. More important than you, that's for sure. Also, you kind of stopped talking about the dreams, sir. Kind of wanted to know what those dreams were all about. Well, the dreams that I've had. Is it... I thought it was the visions, actually. That lady that we saw in the ship. That one is the only one that really sticks to my mind, I guess. But the fact that we're learning magic here, and the magic Arcane is connected to the gods, I wonder what that means.
I always saw the same glaring, terrible light. Heard screaming, and I felt like I was burning up from the inside. And above all,
I know.
a veil, there was the knowledge of imminence. At first, of course, I dismissed these dreams as the delusion of a man close to death. So I concentrated on making it through the mountains somehow. 2 days after my escape, I was completely exhausted, and I would have died if a former acolyte of my son had not found me.
Yeah, I know these guys. I know that what the visions are talking about. That wasn't the only one. When we arrived ashore, and actually, I don't think the lady in the boat is actually a vision. We did get some visions. Remember that one in that dungeon that we got that told us basically where to go, and then the apothecary ones that we got as a premonition, as it were. So I'm not really sure what that is. He knows a lot, so I guess an acolyte of your son. But weren't they your enemies then? I mean...
Yes, but he did not recognize me, and brought me to their headquarters instead, an old monastery in the mountains. The others were aware of my identity, but for whatever reason they did not kill me. Maybe because they thought that the death of the Lightborn had made me insignificant. I do not know. Still, even after my recovery, the dreams continued. At first, I doubted my sanity, but after some time I told the leader of the mages, Constantine, about them.
Oh.
And he said something that I'd never expected. I was not alone. He, as well as many others magically gifted on Vin, dreamed the same dreams. And the more we talked about the matter, the stronger our suspicion grew, which has now turned out to be the truth. The dreams, they come from the same place. They are a shared memory.
A shared memory of the future. That's kind of not how memories work. You mean the dreams originate from a common mind?
The collective subconscious, yes. I know that you can feel it too, and probably far more intense than we do. But like you back then, we were not able to make sense of the images. So we went looking for answers in the remains of the civilization that was before us, the Pyreans.
Yeah. Thus the excavations, like in old Rashengrad. What did you find out?
3 things. First, there were many civilizations before us and before the Pyreans. Maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. Second, the history of each civilization unfolded and still unfolds according to a pattern. They emerge, they blossom, and at some point, at the apex of their existence, they simply disappear without any trace. And third, everything that has happened in the past years, and which is still happening, indicates that this disappearance lies ahead of us. We are part of an eternal loop, a cycle, and our cycle is approaching its end.
I really enjoy this sort of storyline. I really enjoy it. Some of my favorite fiction is based upon this notion here of a cyclical thing, and I really like it. It's a choice over here though. No, there's more. Interesting. Oh, he's saying things. So a pattern. You mean that the chronicles of each civilization are identical?
Not identical, But one can split them up into episodes which repeat themselves in the very same manner, into patterns.
So this is your explanation for the Red Madness. The wars?
Yes, dramatically put, they're the envoys of the end.
Huh. Of course, in reality, a situation like this would be really, really hard to prove. Like, if you're writing this sort of storyline, you need to make it purposely vague and purposely fantastic, because history is cyclical itself. I mean, the fact that we learn from our own history, or fail to learn from our own history, makes it, by definition, cyclical. And the fact that we're all basically people throughout the ages, and just, we're all humans, so in practice, all these civilizations, of course, would, you know, there's raisings and there's fallings, and you can see those patterns. As an historian would be able to see those patterns, but to assign them something mystical, now that's where you get the fiction. That's where you get the storytelling right there. So, of course, the Red Madness here being the catalyst. I suppose the catalyst might not be the... That's not the catalyst, actually. That's the... What's actually going on. Let's see. Hundreds of prophets have predicted the end of the world, and it never happened. You dummy! It did! Didn't he just tell you that it happened? He's also... Like... Okay, let's break this down. The end of the world. Me saying this line over here is in reference to him saying the end of the world. Now, what he's actually saying is the end of our world, as in the civilization that we're in. The Pyreans' world reached its end. It never happened means it's saying that the Pyreans' world didn't reach its end, which is actually it's probably a valid historical claim, but we're in fiction, so it's not history. Which, you know, if it were to be the case, it would mean that the Pyreans had actually, you know, there were people that came from the civilization and then joined themselves into other things, and yeah, so it just changed for those people. But that's just flat out false, and I think it's more of a token line than anything. I'm not really fond of token lines at all. Sort of token lines because in reality, in history, I mean, a lot of prophets have predicted the end of the world, and duh, it never happened. But that's not the same thing. It doesn't mean the same thing here. Anyway, I admit that this world has seen brighter days, but it isn't a little too much of a leap. I suppose that's a little bit of a skeptical take on the issue. You mean that the end of humanity lies ahead? Well, let's go with that one. It's sort of a mixture of these two. A mixture between the little skeptical over there and just a plain misunderstanding, because he's not actually saying the end of humanity. Although I don't know what the Pyreans were. Let's find out.
Yes, it does. At first we considered it absurd, as probably you do at this moment. But there came a moment when we simply could not deny it anymore. We began to study the history of the Pyreans more intensely, and the parallels were extraordinary. In its early days, the Pyrean Empire was split up by a disaster, just like Vin was split up by the Starfall after the reign of the Eterna. Also, the Pyreans had a ruling caste who declared themselves gods after the catastrophe. The two castes of the Sun Priest. They, too, ruled until they were overthrown. This overthrowing was followed by an outbreak of wars and chaos. And then, just like that, the Pyreans ceased to exist. They knew it was imminent, but they could not prevent it. They called this event the Cleansing.
Okay, so he puts it in the traditional trappings of prophetic pseudo-history. It's interesting because he's saying you can see some omissions in his saying. So basically, he's actually quoting coincidences there, or actually, no, he's not quoting coincidences. He's quoting coincidence in the sense that, you know, yes, it was you know, the same. So let me try and explain this as best as I can, so you can understand my perspective here. So what he's quoting of the Pyreans is that they were split at the beginning, the Starfall thing that he mentioned, just like this civilization because of the Vin thing, or something. Now, that's one coincidence, right? In the sense that it coincides. and he's quoting that. He also said the ruling castes, which is another thing, and he also said the overthrow, which is another thing, and then he mentioned the wars at the end, which are all similar. Now, the problem with this sort of historical analysis, apart from it just being pokey as all hell, and you shouldn't do that because it's just you're sort of pursuing your own thing. You can do that, but of course you're gonna get discredited because it doesn't work. The problem with that is that you're ignoring all the other instances where there were no coincidences. And that's a name in science. I just don't know what exactly it is, but basically it's akin to you looking at a different, two groups of people and looking for coincidences. And in the sense, that they coincide. That let's say in Group A, all men are slightly. Let's put it. Well, let's say the average man in Group A is stronger than the average woman, and in Group B that's the same. So they somehow must be related, and you just try to draw conclusions from that. Of course, that's a very simple and actually not a very good example, but it's a very simple example. So you're looking for coincidences and ignoring the other ones. That's actually confirmation bias, and specifically here because they're drawing from the Pyreans. But more importantly here, and that's actually the tell that got me into this rant, which is not really a rant against the writing, it's because, I might not take him seriously. I don't know what's going to happen, but the thing that actually set me off there was him referring the wars. Because in history, there are examples where you can say something similar to what he said about an empire that fell, and at the end of the empire there were a lot of wars. But you can say that, and it's true, but you're failing to mention all the wars that existed all throughout the empire, because usually empires just have a lot of wars. If you don't mention it, then it makes it sound like the wars caused the end of the empire, or were a consequence of the end of the empire, or any sort of correlation there where it doesn't necessarily exist, and you're just not drawing any conclusion there. So his interpretation, despite, I believe, the dreams being a very serious thing to take into consideration, I think is just taking huge leaps of logic there and lack of logic there that can be mimicked and that are mimicked in actual human history, and that you will see people fall into these traps time and again. So that's interesting. I hope the writers were aware of what I'm saying here and that they are basically doing this on purpose. But if I'm honest, considering all the things I've said so far about this game, despite me really liking its writing, I think it is obvious that the writers don't have the same historical background as I have. If you want to write stories, you really need to know history. That's just, you need to, because it just gives you perspective. History is, everybody should know history, but if you're a writer, you need perspective, because you're writing different characters, and it seems that, like, whoever wrote this doesn't. I've talked to plenty of that, but yeah. Let's see what I can do here. Oh no, I don't want to look at your boots, sir. Even though they probably are very nice, they're not. They're terrible. Seriously, those boots are terrible. What are those, man? They're not boots. They're room shoes made out of leather. So the Pyreans knew about the threat. The question is, how do you know this? Why didn't they try to do something about it? And how do I know that they didn't try to do something about it? Because he said they couldn't stop it, doesn't mean they didn't try it, but let's find out.
They tried, but they failed. Who knows why? Maybe they found out too late, or maybe they were too weak.
More than half his line is pure conjecture. That's usually a tell as well. And also the repetition, but that's one of my pet peeves. He twice said the word maybe, which is, of course, if you're going to say maybe in historical analysis, that mark of quality right there. So how in the blazes can an entire civilization just disappear? Also, it didn't disappear, because he knows this stuff for starters, and I'm pretty sure there's Pyrean ruins, so they didn't disappear. Their people did. But we're in a game that's a mod of Elder Scrolls. Have you heard of the Dwemer's, mister? Actually, wait a minute. The Pyreans are the Dwemer ruins. Nice. That's a nice coincidence. Of course, it's fine, but...
That is the question we need to find an answer to.
That's true.
The end was not violent, at least not in a sense as we know it. There was no natural disaster, no magical explosion, no plague. Even though there was war in the Pyrean Empire before its ruin, when the cleansing happened, it was as if all living beings simply fell down and died. It is ghastly.
It's pretty cool, actually. Can be explained with a huge amount of things. Especially from the historical bias is a thing, and in this, what he's saying actually can be explained with so many different things. They might not have fallen down where they stood. They might have died like in the span of maybe 100 years, and it still would look like they all fell down and died. This happens in smaller communities in archaeological evidence, and we can't distinguish from if they died all at the same time. It's very tricky unless there's, of course, written texts and other things. But the archaeological evidence would not register like the progressiveness of it all, because there would just be, I mean, unless of course you're carbon dating things, but that's another thing. These guys don't have carbon dating. They don't know what an atom is. So where do I come in all this? Where do these visions and my powers come from?
Well, this is the reason why we need your help. Not only episodes of history recur within every cycle, characters do as well.
Yeah, if only characters were a real thing, especially in history. It's all about the interpretation, especially in history. Our king is a king, and there's many kings, but they're very different people, right? Still, it's many kings. And you can see the repetition there, right? Because you have many kings. If you're gonna do prophets, then they're even more different. And throughout history, they all happen right there as well. Repetition? Or is it just the way we look at them? And we look for patterns, and that's the historical bias I was talking about. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. So what do you mean characters recur?
Yes, the Pyreans call them the Emissaries. They emerge very shortly before the cleansing occurs, like a law of nature, an answer to the Red Madness. And I am one of them, as are you. While I take on the role of the ruler, you take on the role of the prophetess.
Prophetess, did you notice? The line wasn't changed. I'm supposed to be a prophetess, then?
It's just a description. Call it what you will. But without doubt, it is the truth. Your story matches the descriptions perfectly.
I actually didn't know Prophet had a female version. So, I take it this is the reason why Neremy's mages are here, isn't it? Firespark, Baghast, Skyrim?
Yes. Former enemies or not, both sides have understood the magnitude of the threat. The magical knowledge of Narazul's former mages is vast, as is the power of the Holy Order. Even though not all of the Keepers agree, as you probably have already noted yourself.
Yeah, I know. Why me of all people?
I do not know. Firespark the Mage has told me your story. And even though your fate is tragic, unlike me, you were insignificant before your change. So maybe everyone can become an emissary, or we simply have not understood the pattern yet.
You know what really would be good? Flashbacks in all of this. Or a journal that tells me about what we saw at the beginning of the game, because I'm pretty sure the beginning of the game connects to this very, very closely. And it explains things. I think somebody commented about that as well. So if I play a role, does that mean that something is controlling me? Controlling us? No. No, it doesn't. If you're gonna play a role in a role-playing game, you need to choose your own role. Otherwise, it's not a role-playing game. Ta-ta! No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
No. As I already said, the emissaries simply appear at the beginning of the end, like pieces on a chessboard. We are determined by our skills. How and to what end we use them is our choice.
But to no consequence, that's what you're saying. Also, how do pieces appear towards the end in a chess game? What? I don't... Like, what? I think you might be talking about other things. So what defines this prophet?
On the one hand, your power. You carry the potential to master any skill within a fraction of the usual time needed.
Yes.
I assume you have already realized this.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, your ability to look into the past, and therefore into the future.
Because those are the same thing. Into the past, what do you mean?
Your visions are a window into the past. And as every cycle is based on the same events, it is a window into the future as well. You can feel the thread this world is woven with. And because of that, you can see things that have happened, and thus will happen again. This gift makes you indispensable to us, and it is why I want your help.
That's a really cool notion, a really cool concept there. That we can look into the past to see the future simply because of that cyclicalness. That's very cool. The thing is, we saw visions of premonition of the apothecaries being blown up, and if they're gonna do that, they really need to explain how that works, because that was more than a cyclical nature of history. So if all this... No, wait a minute. And if all of this doesn't interest me, I'm gonna say, because it doesn't have any consequence.
Hollow words. Deep inside, you know your responsibility. Trust me, we are more alike than you believe.
Why do you think we can overcome this cycle in the first place? After hundreds of civilizations have failed?
That is the wrong question. The correct question is, what alternative do we have? To wait and die?
Oh, you don't think? Oh, so okay. So I asked, why does he think we can overcome? He says it's a wrong question. Why is it wrong? Because it's starting from the presumption that he does think that we can overcome. So what? I mean, that would be the correct, or my own interpretation of that. What's in it for me if I help you?
If it is wealth and power you seek, you will have it. The
Nice.
Order has enough of both.
Good. Can I have the order as well? That'd be cool. This is not a decision I want to make based on a gut feeling, though. Huh. Give me some time.
Very well. I await your answer.
Huh. I don't think this is a choice. But it might be. Let's find out. Next episode. For right now, I'm Colonel RPG, and this has been Enderal. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and leave a comment. Like the video if you want to see the next episode come out sooner rather than later. But above all, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.